Hello and welcome to today's webinar for Turaco Gold Limited. My name is Nicola Gazzatti of Investor Relations Consultancy Corporate Storytime. Turaco Gold is a gold exploration company in Côte d'Ivoire, West Africa, with a highly prospective Birimian greenstone tenement package proximal to major mines. This week, Turaco Gold announced agreements to acquire a majority interest in the Afema Gold Project in southeast Côte d'Ivoire. Today, I'm joined by Turaco Gold Managing Director Justin Tremain, who will run through an investor presentation, which will be followed by a Q&A session. So without any further ado, I'm pleased to hand over to Justin.
Thanks, Nicola, and thanks for the introduction. So as Nicola mentioned, this week, Turaco announced the acquisition of an interest in the Afema Gold Project, which is located in southeast Côte d'Ivoire. Under this transaction, Turaco is acquiring an initial 51% interest in the project from the largest West African gold producer in Endeavour Mining Corporation. And then we have an agreement with our partner, Sodim, to increase our interest to 70% through the completion of preliminary feasibility study and ultimately feasibility study, and then moving forward into development of the project. As part of the acquisition, we've also bolstered our management team. So with the appointment of Rob Seed as a Chief Operating Officer, and Rob has extensive experience in West Africa, having previously run several mining operations, predominantly in Burkina Faso and Mali. And Rob was originally engaged to help us with the due diligence on this project and saw such great potential with the project that was keen to join the company on a full-time capacity as Chief Operating Officer. And he'll be supported by our existing Chief Geologist, Elliot Grant, who'll really be focused on looking at exploiting and testing the fantastic exploration potential that this project has that has really not been touched over the last 15 years. Turaco will issue shares in part consideration to Endeavour Mining Corporation. So our shares on issue will increase to around 550 million shares, and we'll see Endeavour, as I said, the West Africa's largest gold producer, join our register as about a 9% shareholder in the company. Just quickly touching on Côte d'Ivoire, I think it's worth touching on the country. There's obviously been some publicity over the last year or two around West Africa and the security risks in West Africa. So now I think it's best to look at West Africa in two, really. There's the northern countries, the Sahel countries such as Burkina Faso, Mali and Niger, which have seen military coups and have become quite unstable and have some security risks associated with them. Whereas the countries along the coast, and particularly Côte d'Ivoire, has not seen any of those issues. And it's a very safe place to operate with a very stable political environment. And that's why we as Turaco are very comfortable operating in Côte d'Ivoire. And I think without question, you'd have to rate Côte d'Ivoire as really the tier one country in West Africa. And some of those mid-tier West African producers, I think, will all be jumping over themselves to establish a presence in Côte d'Ivoire. And as the largest landholder in Côte d'Ivoire, we see ourselves very well strategically placed to benefit from that interest in Côte d'Ivoire moving forward. And this Afema project only further enhances that. So the Afema project is located in southeast Côte d'Ivoire, so as far south as you can go in West Africa. And I don't think you could find a better located gold project in West Africa for a development of a new mining operation. We're located just off a brand new highway, and you can see a photo here of that highway just being completed in the last few months. And that highway runs from Abidjan, the capital, across the southern border of the Afema project area and into a border crossing into Ghana. And so we're located only 120 kilometres east of Abidjan and about an hour and a half drive out of the capital of Abidjan. And Côte d'Ivoire is the most developed country in West Africa with the best infrastructure. And in fact, on the northwest corner of the project area, we have one of Côte d'Ivoire's major hydropower schemes that supplies a significant portion of the country's electricity, and that's situated 20 to 30 kilometres. So just looking then at the geology, a great location physically for the project, but it's really the geological setting that most interested us. And I know this is a project that's been of interest to some of the majors over the last 10 to 20 years, given the conceptual geological setting. So we all know how many world-class deposits have been discovered and mined in Ghana. And those deposits are predominantly hosted within 4 gold belts. And the Afema project area covers the convergence of 3 of those belts into the southeast corner of Côte d'Ivoire, as you can see on this figure here. And those belts host world-class plus 5 million ounce deposits. And obviously where you have 3 major structures coming together, it's a very interesting place to be exploring for large gold systems. So if we assume that no work had been done prior on this property, it would be still a very, very interesting project. But that's not the case, with over 200,000 metres of drilling have already been completed within the red area here, which represents the granted mining permit of the Afema project, which is valid until the year 2033, with a further 20-year renewal beyond that. And Turaco has also secured the exploration tenure around that, which covers another 1,000 square kilometres, gives a total project area of 1,200 square kilometres, which is all incorporated in the joint venture with Sodium. So just zooming in on the geology, you can see here a couple of those belts. So this yellow area here running through the middle of the mining permit is what we refer to as the Afema Shear. And that represents the extension of this Sefwi-Bibiani belt that hosts the Bibiani and Chirano belts there. And in yellow represents the anomalous geochemistry along that shear, which extends for a strike length of 25 kilometres through that mining permit, and the northern extensions extend into the exploration tenure to the north there. And this has been the focus of historical drilling, where that 200,000 metres of drilling has been undertaken previously by an unlisted company called Taurus Gold, but also prior to that, there was some heap leach mining undertaken on this in the 1990s, where about 125,000 ounces of gold was exploited. Teranga Gold Corporation, one of the significant West African gold producers, actually entered into a joint venture with Sodium in 2018, and they made a new discovery off this shear on a north-south structure splaying off the Afema Shear at an area called Wulu Wulu. And as I'll show you, they undertook a substantial amount of drilling on that before Endeavour Mining Corporation acquired Teranga in 2021, and then no further drilling has been undertaken since then until Turaco will commence drilling immediately on that Wulu Wulu target. So at Wulu Wulu, as I said, sits off the Afema Shear, and you can see the Afema Shear here highlighted with the soil geochemistry that stands out very strong with anomalous gold soils. And then the Wulu Wulu, you can see the anomaly sort of sitting just to the north off the shear. And you see multiple anomalies elsewhere outside the mining licence. There hasn't been a single hole drilled outside of this mining licence, but with some seriously compelling soil anomalies sitting within 5 kilometres that we're very much excited about drilling the first hole into those anomalies. But just really focusing on Wulu Wulu, the discovery that was made by Teranga only in 2019, and they subsequently, in a couple of drill programs, put in over 20,000 metres of diamond drilling. And you can see here all of that drilling that Teranga did, and they've drilled out on 40-metre spacing, so resource definition drilling, 2.9 kilometres of strike. And that strike remains completely open, particularly to the south, where there's local artisanal mining exploiting the same structure along strike to the south. But that 2.9 kilometres has been drilled out to resource stage down to about 120 to 140 metres vertical depth, and completely open at depth, as you can see in this long section here. In fact, some of the deeper holes that were drilled, a couple of holes that were drilled sort of between 150 and 200 metres, just a handful of holes, seem to indicate some very high-grade plunging zones to the south that you can see here in the purple pinkish areas here, such as 25 metres at 4.4 grams per tonne, which obviously remains completely open. So only down to 120 metres, obviously, all of this is open pittable potential resources. And what is really interesting with this deposit is it's a very simple deposit as far as gold deposits go. So it's a very broad zone of mineralisation that continues over that 2.9 kilometres of drilled strike. And you see 2 representative sections here. And each section looks exactly like this. So it's a 40 to 60 metre wide zone of mineralisation from surface that's grading at 1 to 1.5 grams per tonne. So very potential low strip ratio, high conversion of resources to reserves. And those intercepts there, we could show you 100 intercepts from the drilling that Turaco did, which look like that sort of 50, 60, up to 80 metre wide intercepts at +1 gram per tonne. And the consistency of mineralisation from section to section is extremely good, and also the consistency of samples down the drill hole from sample to sample is also very consistent. So a very homogeneous ore body. Turaco did some preliminary metallurgical test work as part of the drill out of this deposit, and that demonstrated that this deposit, Woulo Woulo, is not refractory, with +95% recoveries in the oxide and around 90% recoveries in the fresh rock. As part of our further drilling, stepping out and extending this deposit at depth, we'll also do further metallurgical test work as part of pre-feasibility and feasibility studies moving forward. And Woulo Woulo will form the cornerstone of our project moving forward that ultimately Turaco will look to develop. But then looking further outside, you can see Woulo Woulo sitting on this north-south structure off the Afema shear, which is not a potential multi-million ounce shear system. It is a confirmed multi-million ounce gold system with extensive amount of drilling along that 25 kilometres. And you can see all of that drilling there in these little white circles there. So there was a historic N43 101 resource established over that Afema shear, which excludes the Woulo Woulo discovery, which is a recent discovery. But we will be looking at remodelling that drilling and coming out with our own JORC resource, which we'd be looking to do in the first 6 months of ownership of this project, which would also incorporate the Woulo Woulo deposit. But along this shear, there's about 15 deposits that have been drilled. Only really 2 of those deposits have been drilled at depth, and that's the Jonction and Anuri deposits, Jonction in the north, Anuri towards the south. But there's still substantial amount of oxide mineralisation that's already been drilled and a lot of scope to add shear. There is significant mineralisation. And if we just look at the Anuri deposit to the south there, you can see the extent of this mineralisation that's been drilled down to 300 metres here, with such results as 33 metres at 7 grams per tonne, 67 metres at 3 grams per tonne. Very wide zones of very good grade mineralisation. Historically, this is considered to be sulfide mineralisation that is refractory. However, there has not been any test work done on this for probably 15 years. And so something that Turaco will be looking at doing is further test work on this sulfide mineralisation to look at things such as flotation and ultrafine grinding and intensive cyanide leaching to see if we can achieve an economic level of gold extraction, in which case we would not only have the Woulo Woulo mineralisation plus the oxide mineralisation along this Afema shear, but a substantial amount of sulfide mineralisation along the Afema shear, and will become a very substantial project for Turaco. And further to add to that, looking at the Jonction deposit in the northern part of the Afema shear, still within the mining permit area. This is a spectacularly high-grade deposit, and what to 500 metres and remains still completely open at depth. So once again, this was considered to be refractory in the sulfide mineralisation, and we will be doing some further test work to see if we can unlock that metallurgy, but that is really upside to this project, and we're certainly not reliant on that moving forward towards development. And then further afield, the exploration potential of this project area is phenomenal in our opinion, and that's what really got us interested in this project. As I said, all the historical drilling has been done along the Afema shear, but we have parallel structures which represent extensions of those significant Ghanaian gold belts, such as this Nima Lesser shear zone sits just to the south of the Afema shear. This extends for about 20 kilometres through the project area, and of most interest is the southern area of this, just sitting off the mining permit, but still within our exploration tenure, at a prospect we call Afenu, where there's been no drilling whatsoever. There's been exceptional trenching results, such as 28 metres at 3 grams, 10 metres at 3 grams, and then channel sampling across what is a reasonably significant orpiage or artisanal mining site, where trenching across one of those pits across strike has returned 36 metres at 4 grams per tonne without a hole drilled. And what those artisanal miners are exploiting is not a narrow vein, it is a very broad zone of saprolite mineralisation that extends, their workings extend for over 50 metres in width across strike. And this sits within a soil anomaly that extends for about 2 kilometres in strike. So we're looking very much forward to putting the first hole in this, this prospect. And that sits only about 5 to 6 kilometres away from the Woulo Woulo deposit, which, as I said before, will become the cornerstone of a feasibility study and ultimately a mining operation moving forward. And then elsewhere, as I said, some of the area has been tested outside the mining permit just with soil geochemistry, but no drilling whatsoever. And those areas that have been tested with soil geochemistry, which has targeted anomalous stream sediment sampling that was undertaken across the whole project area, have generated spectacular anomalies that are walk-up drill targets for Turaco to test in the short term, such as the Abafia target and Copper Crow, which just sit to the north of the Woulo Woulo, still within a 10 to 15 kilometre project radius. So looking forward, once we complete the acquisition, and the acquisition remains only conditional upon the Minister of Mines approving Turaco's entry into this project as a majority shareholder, and also extending the terms of a mining convention that is attached to the mining licence. And we expect that to be achieved in the short term. And then we'll commence drilling immediately. We already have a drilling contractor ready to go, mobilised to start to commence that drilling. That drilling will start at Woulo Woulo, looking at extending Woulo Woulo at depth, providing metallurgical samples for Woulo Woulo, and also drill some holes into Jonction and that Anuri deposit to give us some samples to undertake some metallurgical work on that to see if we can unlock some of that sulfide, high-grade sulfide mineralisation. And we're expecting to then be able to announce a maiden JORC resource within 6 months for this project. And we're confident that that will give us the economies of scale then to kick off a pre-feasibility study, which ultimately will lead into a definitive feasibility study. But whilst we're doing that, we really want to look at the growth potential of this project by testing some of these very close proximal exploration targets. And ultimately, we see this project having all the hallmarks of being a 5 million ounce project. And that's why Turaco has chased this project very hard over the last 12 months. Looking at the transaction that we've entered into both with Endeavour and our joint venture partner Sodium, as I said, we're acquiring a 51% interest initially from Endeavour Mining Corporation, and that is for $1.5 million in cash and 46.5 million shares, which will see them come out with an 8.5% shareholder in Turaco. We then have a milestone payment in 12 months of around $1 million in cash paid to both Endeavour and Sodium. And then upon completion of a pre-FS study, we have a $2.5 million payment to make to increase our interest to 65%. And then on completion of a feasibility study, we've got a $3.75 million payment to make, which would increase our interest to 70%. We sole fund our joint venture partner Sodium until development decision, at which point Sodium may make the election to either contribute to their 30% or convert to a 2% NSR moving forward, in which case then Turaco move forward with 100% ownership of the project. So why is this opportunity? It's a fantastic opportunity for a company such as Turaco. And why has this come about? It's really come about because we already had a strong presence in Côte d'Ivoire, already the largest exploration landholder in Côte d'Ivoire, and we're very active. And we've demonstrated that not just to our joint venture partner Sodium, but also to the government, that we are very aggressive when it comes to moving projects forward with drilling, not just within Turaco, but within the same team on prior companies where we've had success in Côte d'Ivoire. So just to summarise, we've secured the rights to a 70% interest in what we think will become a multi-million ounce gold system or gold project, and really be one of Côte d'Ivoire's next multi-million ounce gold projects to be developed. It has unbelievable exploration potential that has not been tested over the last 15 years, and we look forward to undertaking a significant amount of drilling to test that. And we have a team both on ground and at a board level that has had prior success both in Côte d'Ivoire and elsewhere in taking projects such as the Afema project through resource definition, feasibility, and ultimately development. And we are very comfortable operating in Côte d'Ivoire, that we see as, without question, the tier 1 jurisdiction of West Africa. Just quickly touching on, we do have other projects within Côte d'Ivoire. Just flicking through some of those. We will look to retain our Ibernia project and continue to advance our Ibernia project, which sits in central Côte d'Ivoire, where we made a new discovery called Satama. And in fact, we're commencing another drilling program at that Ibernia project in the next week or so. And then northern projects, where we have 4 projects, we'll look at rationalising some of those projects, because certainly going forward, we want to be focused predominantly on this Afema project and also on our Eburnia project. So that sort of summarises it. And Nicola, I'm happy to take any questions from anyone.
Thank you so much for the update, Justin. Our first question for today is, there's already been a lot of drilling over the Afema project. Do you have a rough feel for the sort of mineral resource estimate which might be possible from a review of the work conducted to date?
Well, look, Nicola, to answer that, obviously we're looking at coming out with a maiden JORC resource, as we said, within 6 months of completing this acquisition. So I guess we'd wait till that resource comes out. But as I've said a moment ago, we really see this project as having all the hallmarks of being a 5 million ounce project, and that's ultimately what our ambition will be and our target will be for this project.
Thanks, Justin. Our next question. I love the look of the transaction, but why are you doing it? I thought the plate was already full.
Yeah, well, it's a good question. I mean, obviously, we already have an extensive ground position, predominantly in the north of Côte d'Ivoire. So there's a few reasons, but without question, the main reason is the Afema project is a more advanced project. Historically, there's been over $40 million spent on this project. As I said, over 200,000 metres of drilling. So that gives us a huge step forward and minimises the time for Turaco to become ultimately a development and production company. And so we think it's in the best interest of our shareholders that we focus on this Afema project and grow the company the quickest out of all of the projects. And also to add to that, the location of the project, it's in the south of Côte d'Ivoire, so it's not exposed to some of the security issues that you see in northwest Africa around Burkina Faso, Mali, and it's only an hour and a half out of Abidjan, the capital of Côte d'Ivoire.
So, Justin, the next question does touch on the political situation in Côte d'Ivoire. Some West African countries have seen some instability recently. Can you comment on Côte d'Ivoire's political situation and security?
Yeah, so Côte d'Ivoire is the most developed country in West Africa historically, and still has a very strong French presence in the country. And it has seen a period of extended political stability since 2011. And the same president's been in power since 2011. The next election's not until the end of 2025. And so, as I've been at pains to point out, it's not exposed to the same issues that you've seen in the north. And we see it as a much lower risk jurisdiction than any other country in West Africa. And we are very, very comfortable as a company operating there. And we also see that the existing producers in West Africa have their eyes on Côte d'Ivoire, which in the medium to long term, I think is of significant strategic value for Turaco.
Thank you, Justin. Our next question. You mentioned that some of the gold along the Afema shear is considered refractory. How will you deal with that, and how does that affect the project?
Yeah, well, our base case, if you like, is really focused on the Woulo Woulo deposit, which is not refractory in the fresh rock there, and also the oxide mineralisation along the Afema shear. And that's our base case. But we want to do test work because, as I said, there hasn't been any recent test work, metallurgical test work, along the sulfide mineralisation along that Afema shear. And there is a huge amount of resource potentially to be exploited there. And in the last sort of 10 years, you've seen such things as ultra-fine grinding now really becoming an accepted conventional processing route, and many successful operations now operate with flotation and ultra-fine grinding followed by leaching to produce gold doré. So that has not really been, in our view, properly tested along that Afema shear, and it's not a huge cost for us to do some metallurgical test work on that basis. And that would just be added bonus and added growth to what is already, in our view, a substantial base case to work with.
Thanks, Justin. Our next question, can you describe the regulatory pathway envisaged to bring Afema into production?
Sure. Well, the crux or the core of what's been drilled and what I've just mentioned is actually already sits within a granted mining permit. And in fact, and that permit was granted in 2013, it's valid until 2033 with a 20-year option to renew thereafter. And in fact, that is supported with a mining convention with the Côte d'Ivoire government. So as an ASX listed company, and it's a company that would look to debt fund any development of this project, we would have to undertake a new environmental and social impact assessment to IFC performance guideline standards. And so that's something that the company will kick off immediately, along with drilling out a resource and doing a brand new feasibility study. But in Côte d'Ivoire, we've seen several mines permitted and ultimately developed over just the last 5 years. There's probably been 3 or 4 mines gone through that permitting process and financing process, and none of those projects have experienced any problems with permitting.
Thank you, Justin. Our next question, can you explain who your JV partners Sodom are?
Sodom is a Israeli-based private group that's been involved with this project for an extended period of time. They were originally looking to be involved with an unlisted company called Taurus Gold that did the initial amount of work on the project, then ultimately took ownership of the project and brought Tremain in as a joint venture partner in around 2017 to 2018. But it's a group that is I'd say is an investment group out of Israel rather than a mining group.
Thank you, Justin. This is our final question for today. Woulo Woulo looks like a maiden resource target could be 1.2 million ounces at 1.5 grams per tonne, a good platform to build from towards 5 million ounces in due course. Would management be happy with that as a starting point?
Yeah, I mean, we see Woulo Woulo being as a great starting point. Woulo Woulo plus oxide mineralisation along the Afema shear as being a base case project that we're confident will give the critical mass to move forward with a feasibility study. And a great starting point. But it's really the exploration ground beyond that, outside of the mining permit. It's never seen any exploration, given the location, the geological setting. We find it hard to believe that there won't be further discoveries such as Woulo Woulo within a 20-kilometre proximity. And not immediately, but certainly in the medium term, we see that sort of 5 million ounce target as being a reasonable objective for the company.
Thank you, Justin. That does cover the majority of our questions from the audience today. If you do have any further questions for Justin, please email them to info@corporatestorytime.com. This does conclude our webinar today, and I thank everyone for attending, and thank you to Justin for the comprehensive update.
Thank you.